They laughed when he missed, until they saw what he was really aiming at. A tight group of young recruits lined up behind the firing line, smirking like kids who just caught their teacher making a mistake. The veteran at stall 7 had pulled the trigger once, and the round hadn't even landed on the paper. 25 yards downrange, his target hung pristine and untouched while theirs were peppered with holes in varying degrees of accuracy. "Guess the floor gets the high score today," someone joked from the back of the line. A few others snickered. One recruit leaned over to his buddy and whispered something that made them both grin. But James didn't respond. He didn't even blink. He just stood there, rifle still shouldered, eyes fixed on something none of them could see. He wore an oversized range jacket that had seen better decades, faded olive drab with patches of wear at the elbows. His boots were beat-up leather, civilian style, that didn't match the regulation uniform boots worn by everyone else on the line. They were the kind of boots a man wore when comfort mattered more than appearance, when function trumped form every single time. His gray baseball cap read simply, NAVY. No ship name, no deployment dates, no unit insignia. Just those 4 letters in block font, weathered and salt-stained like it had been through a few storms. When he signed in at the range office, he wrote James M. in careful block letters. No rank listed, no military ID presented. He said he was there for a civilian guest session, sponsored by Senior Chief Petty Officer Williams, a courtesy extended to veterans who'd served with distinction but preferred to shoot as civilians now. The range safety officer barely looked up from his clipboard when he handed over the temporary badge. "Lane 7, the RSO said, pointing with his pen. "We've got the advanced course set up for you there. Senior Chief's orders." James nodded his thanks and walked toward the firing line, carrying his gear in an old ammo can with electrical tape wrapped around the handle. The metal was dented and scratched, painted over so many times you couldn't tell what the original color had been. Most of the recruits assumed he was someone's relative tagging along for fun, maybe trying to relive some long-ago glory days. They were wrong about the glory days part. Lane 7 was different from the others. While the recruits shot at standard paper targets at 25 yards, James's lane had been configured for what the instructors called unconventional target engagement, a training exercise designed to simulate real-world scenarios where the target wasn't always directly in front of you. His hands didn't shake when he loaded the single round into the chamber, not even a tremor. The recruits next to him fumbled with their magazines, dropped rounds, asked each other about sight adjustments. But James's movements were economical, practiced, automatic, like muscle memory that had been carved into bone years earlier. His eyes didn't squint when he looked downrange. Most shooters at the indoor range wore prescription glasses or safety glasses, squinting against the fluorescent lights and concrete glare. But James's eyes were steady, focused, reading the range like a book he'd memorized long ago. He stood like he'd stood there 1,000 times before. Not the awkward, tentative stance of a weekend warrior, but the solid, rooted position of someone who'd learned to shoot when his life depended on getting it right the first time. His feet were shoulder-width apart, weight distributed evenly, support arm positioned correctly for his shooting stance. The range instructor, Petty Officer First Class Martinez, walked by during the setup period. He'd been briefed about the special guest in the advanced training scenario. Senior Chief Williams had called ahead. "We've got a former operator coming in. Set up the challenge course on Lane 7. He's here to show our recruits what real precision looks like." "Sir, your target parameters are loaded," Martinez said, handing James a range card. 20-yard oblique shot, elevated target, simulated hostage scenario. One shot, clean hit required. James took the card and studied it briefly. The target was a silver dollar mounted on a bracket welded to the concrete wall, positioned at an angle that required precise calculation of distance, elevation, and windage. A red silhouette was painted just inches away, representing a hostage. Missed by more than an inch in any direction, and the hostage would be hit. Understood, James said quietly. Standard qualification parameters? Yes, sir, but I have to warn you, in 15 years of running this course, only 3 people have made the shot. All of them were active special warfare operators. James nodded, studying the target setup. What's the record for consecutive hits? Martinez smiled grimly. 7. Set by a SEAL instructor who used to train here. He called it the coin drill. Said every operator should be able to make this shot under pressure because someday their teammate's life might depend on it. James carefully adjusted his position, not to aim at the paper target like the recruits expected, but to engage the advanced course target. The silver dollar glinted in the fluorescent light, barely visible from the firing line. The painted red silhouette beside it served as a constant reminder of what was at stake. Sir, Petty Officer Martinez announced to the range, we have a special demonstration on Lane 7. Former Navy operator attempting the advanced precision course. This is the same qualification our special warfare teams use to test combat accuracy under stress. The recruits turned to watch, their earlier mockery replaced by curiosity. They'd heard rumors about the special courses, the impossible shots that SEALs and other operators had to make, but they'd never seen one attempted. Senior Chief Williams entered the range area, clipboard in hand. Carry on, James. Show these recruits what they're training toward. James raised his rifle, found his sight picture, and began his breathing cycle. The range went completely silent. Even the ventilation system seemed quiet, as if the building itself was holding its breath. He wasn't just shooting at a target. He was demonstrating the kind of precision that separated weekend warriors from those who'd learned to shoot when lives hung in the balance. The kind of shot that might mean the difference between bringing everyone home and losing someone who trusted you to make the impossible look routine. When James squeezed the trigger, the crack of his rifle was different somehow. Sharper, more purposeful, like it knew exactly where it was going. The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. Then Martinez walked to the target wall, studied the result, and turned back to the group. Clean hit, dead center, hostage unharmed. But James wasn't finished. Without being asked, he loaded another round, reset his position, and fired again. Then another, and another. By the time he'd finished, he'd put 7 rounds through the same silver dollar, each shot perfectly centered, each one demonstrating the kind of precision that couldn't be taught in basic training or learned from a manual. It was the kind of skill that came from years of knowing that missing meant your teammate didn't come home. After the demonstration, Senior Chief Williams gathered the recruits around the target wall. The silver dollar was gone, completely destroyed by the repeated impacts, but the red silhouette remained untouched. This is what we're training you toward, Williams said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. Not just hitting targets, but making the shots that matter. Someday, one of you might find yourself in a situation where the target isn't a piece of paper and missing isn't an option. He turned to James, who was quietly packing his gear. Care to share any wisdom with our future sailors? James looked up from his ammo can, studying the faces of the young recruits. He saw himself in their eyes, eager, confident, convinced that basic training had prepared them for whatever came next. He remembered being that young, that sure of himself, before he'd learned that the hardest shots were the ones you never saw coming. The target isn't always where you expect it to be, he said simply. Train for the shot you hope you'll never have to make, because when that moment comes, you won't get a second chance to get it right. James walked past the line of recruits as they processed what they'd witnessed. Nobody joked this time. The easy confidence they'd shown earlier had been replaced by something deeper, respect for the skill they'd witnessed, and understanding of what they were truly training for. He stopped at the armory window to return his borrowed rifle and ammunition. The young petty officer behind the counter looked at the range card, saw the perfect score, and gave a respectful nod. Thank you for the demonstration, sir. he said quietly. James handed in his temporary badge and signed out in the same careful block letters he'd used to sign in. Senior Chief Williams walked him to the door. "The coin drill still working?" Williams asked. "7 in a row," James replied. "Same as always." "Good. These kids need to see what they're capable of if they put in the work." James nodded, shouldering his gear bag. "They'll get there. They've got good instructors." And just like that, James left. Boots quiet on the concrete floor, back straight despite the weight of years and memories. The glass door closed behind him with a soft hiss, and he disappeared into the parking lot like he'd never been there at all. The recruits spent the rest of the session talking about what they'd seen, asking questions about the special warfare programs, wondering if they had what it took to make shots like that when it mattered. But Petty Officer Martinez knew they'd learned something more valuable than marksmanship that day. They'd learned the difference between shooting and precision, between hitting targets and saving lives. That evening, Senior Chief Williams updated his training log. Coin drill demonstration completed. 7 consecutive hits. Standard maintained. Recruits motivated. He paused, pen hovering over the page, then added, "The quiet ones are often the most dangerous. Remember that. Some stories deserve to be remembered. The quiet professionals who served without fanfare, who made impossible shots when everything was on the line, who carried their skills in silence long after the wars ended. These men and women walk among us today. Their stories matter. Their sacrifices shaped our world in ways we'll never fully know. Echo Bravo exists to tell these stories. The ones that slip through the cracks, the ones that matter most. If James's story moved you, there are more like it waiting. Like this video if James reminded you that real strength whispers. Share it if you know someone who needs to hear this story, because the quiet ones, they're often the most dangerous, and they deserve to be remembered. Welcome to Echo Bravo, where we remember the unseen.